Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Engineering Influence podcast. Today's show is brought to you by The Market Edge, a new podcast series that was created by the American Council of Engineering Companies national members that are participating in the Market Intelligence Committee. Each episode will feature an industry expert addressing member-specific questions with a focus on market trends, economic insights, and actionable strategies aimed at empowering engineering firms to drive their growth, adapt to change, and maintain their competitiveness. So today we have with us the National Association of Waterfront Employers, or NAWE, President Carl Bentzel, and we will also be talking about ports policy and trade. So Carl, thank you so much for being with us today.
Diana, nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you as well. So, I want to tell our listeners a little bit about Carl. So, he was nominated by President Trump to the Federal Maritime Commission, FMC, in 2019, serving a term through June 2024. In December, he became president of the National Association of Waterfront Employers and executive director of the National Maritime Safety Association, leading advocacy and safety initiatives in the industry. Previously, Bentzel headed federal advocacy at DCI Group and founded a consulting firm focused on regulatory and legislative issues. He served for a decade as Senate committee staff, helping craft landmark legislation like the Maritime Security Act of 1996 and the Maritime Transportation Act of 2002, earning awards from the U.S. Coast Guard and Maritime Security Council. And finally, Bentzel holds a JD from the University of Alabama and an LLM from Tulane's Admiralty Law Institute and a BA from St. Lawrence University. So I'm going to just jump right into our questions here. So those that aren't familiar, Carl, can you tell us more about NAWE and what their mission is?
Sure. Yeah. NAWE's member companies are primarily marine terminal operators. So we're the companies that work at ports. Sometimes people get them mixed up. They conflate everything to be a port, but actually there are businesses that are operating at those ports. And so we represent companies that are marine terminal operators processing cargo through U.S. ports. So our member companies uh, handle about over 90% of our containerized cargo, a majority of the break bulk oversized cargo that comes in and out, and also most all of the passenger services in the United States.
So I'm glad you said that because that's where our connection is. We have a lot of marine terminal operators and other waterfront related employers as clients for our engineering firms. So I'm curious for them, what are the key trends that are impacting what there are clients and your members most right now?
Yeah, sure. No. Engineering companies are required for what we do. It's very complex. It's huge, huge industry. As I say, it's the nation's supply chain. Really, sometimes they talk about semiconductors and other elements that are commodities brought in through our services, but we really service the nation. And so, without great engineering, we can't do it. Technology has gotten so sophisticated that we've been able to handle increases every year. It really is a growth industry as the world has internationalized in its production of goods and commodities and food and healthcare products. So we're also sort of confined geographically. Our member companies are operating in the same places that they've operated for hundreds of years. If you go to a port, it was first a port, and there was a small town, and then there was a city, and then there was a large city, and then there was urban sprawl surrounding our complexes. So, how to get cargo through what are now very densely packed urban environments is the big challenge that we faced as an industry.
Well, I appreciate the plug for engineers. You should come work for us.
Yeah.
uh, so, what are maybe current policies? If we could drill down into some specific trends, there's a lot going on coming out of the White House right now. Are there any trends specifically that are impacting your members and the ports and the surrounding real estate that you work within?
Yeah, I think we've had with this administration some very positive steps and some very challenging steps in the trade environment area. And so we're trying to balance those. I think the big thing, President Trump announced an executive order to revitalize the maritime industrial base, which includes my member companies. We're probably the largest U.S. based entity servicing maritime transport in the United States. It used to be U.S. carriers, but we just don't have very many of them left. But this effort to grow the maritime industrial base and to have more resources is something that we're working closely with the administration on. On the other hand, the challenge has been the tariffs in trade uh, and balancing some of the trade policy, which has been incredibly difficult, both with respect to commodities coming in, uh, trade sanctions, for instance, on Chinese-built ships and Chinese flag vessels that have established market dominance according to the United States government, and also more recently potential USTR actions on cargo handling equipment, the equipment that we'll need to be able to produce the type of traffic flows that we need for our customers and the U.S. public, essentially. So balancing those demands has really been a challenge. But we've seen a very dynamic and volatile trade environment that goes up and down depending on a trade announcement. So how to balance that out, and also in general, the market has been always expansive, growing, and so how do we get the type of engineering and production of our facilities to ensure that we can continue to handle the growth. Uh, we saw what happened during the pandemic when shipping congestion occurred, and that was inflation, and really it was caused by problems getting ships into U.S. ports and commodities through ports when we saw incredible surges of cargo in the early part of the pandemic.
So there's two things I want to drill down further into that point. One is let's talk about ship to shore cranes because you brought up the executive order and the means of maritime. What are they for those that aren't sure? And how are the imports being impacted by the potential restraint of not being allowed to use cranes imported from China?
So the Chinese have had a conscious decision as a government to try to dominate international trade and maritime shipping. That includes the production of ship to shore cranes. Those are the cranes that we use to take a cargo from very large containerized vessels that continue to expand in size. The largest container ships coming into the port of LA Long Beach can carry as much cargo that the first truckload of cargo uh, that was disembarked from a vessel would be entering Las Vegas before the last cargo container got off that ship. So the magnitude of the and size of shipping now is astronomical, and so ship to shore cranes have also changed over that time frame. The Chinese market for ship to shore cranes, those manufactured in China, is 96% of the world's output of STS cranes. So it's complete market domination by Chinese government controlled companies. The US government has indicated that they do not want us to purchase US STS equipment anymore. So we're wrestling with how to get to a point where our almost all of our market is or would be excluded from being used in the future. And that's every crane that we use to take cargo off ships and put them on shore.
Yeah, we'll have to connect later on to see if there are any more developments about the orders that were made in advance of this executive order being put out. I'd be very curious to see if those allow to come through, or what's going to happen there in your industry. Next, I wanted to talk about import volumes. So everyone thought, oh, they would be down because of the tariffs hitting, but now it looks like they're at all-time highs. The import levels are just booming, unseasonally so, even. So, do you think this is still a pull forward effect in anticipation of future Chinese tariffs? Is it economic growth? Is it something else? What do you think?
I think it's a little bit of everything as usual. Uh, but yes, there's some pull forward to accommodate lower tariffs. So we've had two. This will be in our uh, fifth or sixth month of suspension of extremely high tariffs. For instance, for China. Uh, and it's been volatile to say the least. But some of that is being driven because shippers, retailers, manufacturers are trying to take advantage of the fluctuating trade policy, and so we've seen the preliminary assessment we had 3 or 4 months ago when the 145% tariffs went into effect on Chinese cargo was we lost 30 to 40% of cargo to certain terminals that handle a lot of Chinese cargo, for instance, which
Right.
was very similar to what we saw during the pandemic when Chinese manufacturing closed. And then the announcement went into what came into effect that there would be a 3 month suspension of that, and we saw the reverse, a 30 or 40% increase at those same terminals, and even more so, record highs. So it's gone up and down with fluctuation, and it's a little difficult for the industry to adjust because it takes 4 to 5 weeks before anything can respond to a proclamation or a statement because of the time delay in actually getting cargo moving. So there's been a delay. So it really has been a challenge as a result of this.
Understandably so. I'm going to pivot us away from trade and policy a little bit into trends that engineers are following, as port planners and port designers. What's the next big thing that port operators are looking to, or investing in the way of technology? So, how is AI impacting your market? I know recently we put out our own market brief where we're tracking a lot of autonomous tech. There's a lot in the rail cars that, of course, are right there next to you. You've got a lot of the cold storage industry that's just booming because of that capability. What new technology can you tell us about?
It's technology. There's always a lot of discussion about automation and technology, and I really don't like the term automation per se. It does get into issues that we have in our collective bargaining process. So our labor unions that work with us closely are violently opposed to automation, as I believe a lot of Americans are,
Yes.
purely being outsourced as an automated economy. So I like to look at issues related to how we can promote efficiency at ports. And so, actually, I was in the port of Rotterdam visiting terminals there as a FMC commissioner a couple of years ago, and I went into a fully automated terminal complex, and they were taking out some of the automated equipment, literally hundreds of millions of dollars of equipment, because it was relatively slow and couldn't scale up or scale back and adjust to cargo flows. So I think our members are looking at technology that will allow them to maximize the efficient production of their facilities. So pure automation is something I refrain from talking about too much. But for instance, utilizing technology that will allow efficient offloading of cargo onto rail units to maximize the space that we have in a yard is something that has been popular and helpful in producing more growth. What our challenge has is we don't have an opportunity to expand a lot of footprint around us to grow. So we need to make sure that the space that we have is used as productively as possible to handle growth. And so a lot of that is on efficient use of space and maximizing the ability to move cargo. So precision loading and unloading and spacing of cargo equipment and maximizing our space is really the challenge. And on certain coasts, we run into lots of challenges with environmental mandates that require us to reduce the emissions or carbon output of our products and go to electrification. So we need to deal with issues that we haven't dealt with in those areas in the past. Not all over, but for instance, on the West Coast and the Northeast, that is an additional challenge that we face.
Understood. We've been hearing a lot about mergers and acquisitions and increased M&A activity within your industry, specifically in the rail market and beyond. Is there anything you can share with us about that? Is it impacting your members, and how so?
It's a concern. I am in process of composing a letter to the Surface Transportation Board. We're evaluating the proposal to create a transcontinental railroad. My members invest all the time. We would love to get the railroads investing in intermodal rail services from our port to a greater extent, but we literally spend hundreds of millions of dollars every year as an industry putting in intermodal railroad, on dock railroad to our ports. We use the mainline railroads as the primary means of getting into the interior. Our ability at certain ports, their ability to really grow is to accommodate that service into Chicago, into Dallas, into inland destinations. So getting effective services from railroads to do that is critical. And so they are partners, but we are also concerned that eliminating competition sometimes takes that willingness for them to work aggressively for our growth and our potential growth at the port side. So we are looking very closely at that merger. We have some concerns. We're going to want to hear directly how, what their intentions are. But in my view, if we do one merger from the west to the east, there's going to be another merger, and then you're talking about two railroads competing for all of the intermodal cargo through our ports. And so we're going to look very closely at that.
It's definitely going to be a trend worth watching. So that is about all the time we have for today. Carl, thank you so much for joining.
Diana, nice to meet you. And to all the engineers that are out there, companies that are out there, we rely on you for our technology, our planning, and the development of the next generation of space and equipment that we use at our ports. So thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Please join us next month as we are joined by a Maritime and Coastal America's Market Sector Lead and a Maritime Coastal Planning Lead for North America from member firm GHD as we discuss further trends impacting this market, the energy transition, and more. Don't forget to like and subscribe to ACC's Engineering Influence podcast. And thank you for joining the Market Edge. See you next time.